All right, turn with me to Galatians, please. I mentioned to you last week, that we're starting a Galatians study all this month. The lesson is going to have something to do with Paul, something to do with his writings, his teachings. It's going to have something to do in the book of Galatians. If you're not familiar with that, it's towards the back of the Bible. If you're not familiar with the Bible, then I hope you learned something tonight, sweet. As we get into this, there's three major points that we're going to talk about in Galatians. I may not repeat them repetitively. Okay? Think about that for a few minutes. I may not say them over and over again, but here's the three central themes of this lesson. What do we do? How do we do it? And why? As a Christian, one of the pillars of this ministry, certainly Jacob just mentioned something that we constantly, in just about every lesson I believe, we talk about here is giving to others, helping. The food, the toys that we do in December, the coach that we're doing now, the homeless ministry, giving people money, all of these things are things that we do, but why? What is it that you do aside from these mission efforts? What is it that you do? How is it that you do it? And why? Do you ever think about that, or do you just react based on, oh, Chip and Jacob said we're starting this canned food drive, or Chip and Jacob said we're starting this coat ministry or whatever, so I'm going to give. Well, I still think that God can work and see a need through your giving, and we certainly appreciate your efforts in that. But I hope in some way that it goes deeper than just that surface level. It is so much more important than that. There's just three things that we're going to talk about tonight. What do we do? How do we do it? And why? And then also I want us to understand the authority of our ministry, the approach to our ministry, and the concern of our ministry. And we're going to try as best we can to see the parallel of our life. I hope see the parallel of our lives, our personal Christian lives, and then the Apostle Paul. Now, I don't want to put him on a pedestal. Jacob and I had an interesting conversation last night about how the church tends to sometimes put Paul over Christ himself, even, and it's true. And it's not an arrogant thing to say that we're parallel with Paul. I think we all know where we're at in our Christian lives, and we see the power that Paul had. But I believe there's things that we can learn, things that we can see that Paul did, and we can live out in that example. And that's what I want us to do, because there was certainly an authority in Paul's teaching and Paul's efforts. There was certainly a proper approach, and then there was a concern for that. And I want us to be able to analyze these three things. And maybe you don't get that solid, perfect picture, the answer tonight in your life, but maybe the things that we talk about tonight and continue throughout this month, or when you go home in your quiet time or whatever, reflecting on the lesson, you can kind of analyze that and kind of chew that fat, so to speak, and think about it in your own life. So where's our authority, the approach of our ministry, and the concern of that ministry? Your ministry, by the way, is a fancy way of saying your Christian life. Every person in this room is a Christian, which by and large I believe everyone here will say, I am a Christian. You have a responsibility, you have a purpose and a challenge and a direction that God has given you, right? We can read, right? I mean, you guys asleep already? I've not just barely got started. But we see the Great Commission, where God has commanded us as his followers to do something, to preach and teach, to baptize, to care for, to love. We see also in Matthew where it teaches us to love and care for our neighbors as ourselves. We can go on and on and on where we can see we have a challenge. Our ministry is our life as Christians. When we share our lives with people, when we're caring, we're loving, we're being true, proper Christians, living in this testimony, what do you do? Is there something specific that you do that you like to share maybe with the group? There's something that you do that is it's like your thing, your ministry. There's a guy down in Charleston, South Carolina, who just walks all over that area with a cross. He just walks the interstates, he walks the highways, he walks the beaches, he walks the midtown areas. He just walks around, and if you ask him, he says, I'm not Christ. I'm not trying to portray myself as Christ, but I feel like God has called me to be this visible example of taking up your cross and following me. That's what he does. I'm an evangelist. I'm a speaker. That's something that I feel God has called me to do in Christian life. Is there something that you believe God has called you to do?